the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Okay, welcome back to week nine of the Enterprise build, and first thing I need to do is completely remove any vestige of any of the kits that I brought back from the Nuga Nets this last week, because the brain is a fickle thing, and I am already thinking of ideas for how to build and or display the new kits that I bought, and I don't need to be doing that. I need to get through the finishing the Enterprise. So I am going to hide these away as if I never bought them, and bring the other kit up onto this table. Okay, so in a nutshell, here's where we are. I'm getting ready to make the big attachment. This is the next thing that's got to happen. And after that attachment happens, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to the saucer. So I need to put something out here that extends beyond the building harness to not to sit the saucer on, because it's going to be attached, but to kind of take the weight off of the saucer out here, at least while I am doing the building work, while I'm putting pressure on it, like sealing this up, and all the clamps that are going to have to go around the rim and all of that is going to add a lot of weight. Now, once I'm all done, just like the nacelles back here, they won't be resting on anything. But while I'm building, I want to have something that takes the pressure off. So while I'm in Chattanooga, I'm thinking of all of these ideas. What can I do? What kind of bracing can I make? What kind of adjustable thing can I do? And I came up with some sketches from some ideas. And as luck would have it, as I came home from the show and was, at Walmart buying groceries, trying to restock the house, it's back to school time. And back to school time means lots of little cheap furniture. And so this is basically what I ended up picking up. It is and the saucer sitting, it's just an end table. It's an end table with 4 braces, which is amazingly like what I was sketching. Something like this that would meet the saucer at 4 points and take the weight off of it, that I could adjust if I needed to. But this is halfway there, and for cheaper than I could have bought it with just buying, the wood at Lowe's and cutting things up and getting all the tools out and everything. This is halfway home. It's too tall, but I could cut the legs off about halfway and then make them adjustable to make sure that I can level everything up. So let's put it up on a table and I'll show you what I'm talking about. And so here what I'm looking at is the stool I got from Walmart. And yes, it's too tall, but it's easier for me to go in and just hack these legs off at a height that I need and make them adjustable. I could put a slot in one piece and a hole through the other piece, and make them all adjustable so that I can even them up. As you can tell, it's level already, but obviously too tall. So let me put the saucer on there so you can see what I'm talking about. Now you can see we're getting closer to a permanent docking situation, but now I can take some measurements off of it, see how much it needs to be lowered, and go from there. And it can be done with basically one tool, as opposed to getting out the saws and the drills and everything else to get this thing cut off. But that's the next step. Okay, I just got back in from hacking these legs off, and that took all 2 seconds. And now what I can do is drill a hole for a bolt to go through this, and actually the slot will probably be in this since it's easier to work with, but a hole here and a slot here, and then I can adjust this up or down depending. You can see a side view of it here. I can adjust it up or down depending, and that will give me the ability to level off the saucer as I need to. So a hole in here and a slot in here. Okay, here you go. It's not pretty, but it'll do the job, which I don't think anybody could ask anything more out of life than that. I think I'll have that put on my tombstone. He wasn't pretty, but he did the job. So just do 3 more of those, and I'll be ready to have myself a fully adjustable saucer stand. Okay, I got the ship on the table. I've got it leveled up. I've got my new stand underneath the saucer. Working on leveling the saucer, and it's possible for the sake of levelness and levelity, that I may have to loosen that perfect joint there and wedge this up a little bit. I may have to like I say, I may have to open up the front of that joint. As perfect as it is, and as much as I love it, if this makes the saucer be not level, if by pulling that tight, then I'm going to have to loosen it. I've got to, and this is a fool's errand, trying to find a level line here down to the table and making that work. So this is where the brain scratching comes in. Everything looks good, certainly to that point. That looks good. This is very loose, so don't mind that as far as how the nacelles look towards it, but it's the nacelles. We start with that, and that's level as the table is. Let me tell you that it's not level or square to the world. It's square to how square the table is, which tells me if the table is that far out of whack and the level on the Enterprise matches the out of whackness that the table has, then I know it's square to the world or level to the world. So now that I've got this done, I just saw a disturbing forecast for tomorrow, which means I've got to get the grass cut today. So I think this is where we're going to sit it for a while, and I go out and mow at least the front yard. Well, good morning. It's Tuesday. Welcome back. I've got the Enterprise moved out into the dining room. What used to be the dining room, come on, let's face it, I don't dine in here. An auxiliary display room is best what it can be described as now. But it has the one saving grace of, well, two saving graces. A, this table is much more stable. It's much more level, easier to work around than the temporary one I had set up in the living room. And also it's directly under some lighting, so that's going to help. I've got everything leveled back up. Everything is looking good. Let me pop the top off here. Before I set all of that connection in stone, for lack of a better term, before I set all of this in epoxy, I want to take the opportunity to finish up the lighting, the wiring for it. I need to hook up the saucer lighting to the rest of the lighting, and the sad fact is, until I can lift this increasingly heavy ship onto its power pole, I won't be able to adequately test it. But I know I have my diagram still, what wire needs to go where, and then it's going to be a question of just putting some little blocks here to give me some additional gripper space to attach the saucer. And then once that saucer is down and attached and faired in and all of that, then I can touch up the hull color on the saucer rim, obviously, but also at the top of the pylons. I still not touched that up yet. And then the last big thing will be, well, let's not even worry about the last big thing. Let's get through the 20 big things I got to get to before I can get to that point. So let's get the wire nippers out so I can trim some of this wiring down, and then I can hook up the soldering iron and get these last circuits attached. Okay, I know it looks like a refinery at night, but outside of one missing piece, one small missing piece, this is all together now. I've got the saucer on, obviously, got the wiring hooked up. I was testing the wiring to make sure everything was working on that, and it's working like a charm. I've got now you can see the marker lights on either side of the saucer, and the bridge lights, the bridge module connected up. And yeah, that's overspill. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast there. But here, look how it looks from underneath. It looks very nice. I had to pull the sensor dish out to get to the power so that I could run temporary power. But there you can see the strobe on the shuttle bay. That's good. These three lights are still working. This light's working. I've got to paint the colors on the tail end shuttle lights. But everything is together. Well, obviously I got to put the caps on here, but I wanted to make sure the lighting jig was working. So let me see. Turn one off. That turns off the main lights. Two blinks. And that turns off the running lights. This one you know about. One blink turns off the motors. Two blinks turns off. I'm sorry. One blink turns off the lights. Two blinks turns off the motors. C you hadn't seen before, and that is the impulse deck, and that is hooked up. I've got some light leakage to patch, but one turns that off. Two turns the blue off, and that leaves one hit here on the fourth button, and that turns the supposed to turn the this strobes off. Alrighty, now I have got the braces taken back off of the side here because the time has come to do the big glue-in. Now that the wiring has all been done and neatened up, I've got to stick this wiring down, but first it's in the way of the gluing. I could do this and then I can stick the wiring down. But what I'm going to do is get the old epoxy out, epoxy both sides of this central clear bit, squeeze it all together, make it cry uncle, and hopefully that will give me one good solid joint by the time we're all done. And then it's just going to be a matter of reinforcing down the side here like I've done on both sides of these other three supports. I have not yet done that back here, so that will take hopefully some of the weight off of the bolts, some of the strain off of that, and it can share the load with the epoxied clear bit, and then we will be ready to close up this saucer, and won't that be a momentous day? Okay, it's been glued and screwed. Outside of tattooing it, I think that's about all I can do. I've got these wee clamps on it to hold it all together, and I am going to let this cure overnight. This is the last I'm going to do with it, and then we'll come back and hit it tomorrow. I think I still want to reinforce this a bit, and I might even use actual Bondo to do that. That seems to be a good heavy brick of a thing that will reinforce, and I can kind of trowel it back in here behind the impulse deck. Ooh, I gotta get that off. That was a bugger. Bad guy. Bad. Okay, so you gotta watch out for the little drops of, not the drops of Jupiter, but the drops of epoxy that can get where they're not supposed to be. So I'm going to trowel some of that stuff in there like a bandage and let it, trowel it into the wound and let it act like a bandage, to quote the good doctor. Stick these guys down, and then once that sets up, we'll be ready to start attaching the top. I need to make sure that this little bit here, when I put the top down, is in close proximity so that I can pull it up through the hole. But there you go. That's a big chunk of work for the day. I know it doesn't look like I do a lot of work at a time on this, but each step that I do is a monument into itself, so I have to make sure that I have done everything carefully and taken my time and crossed my I's and dotted my T's to do it. So this is the next logical step. Okay, you all know what this is. It's time to put down the main registry number. I have a problem with the pencil line showing up on this glossy paint, and I'm not really worried about that. What I only need for right now is one circumference, which is this one right here, and that is the arc of the top of the numbering. Now the instructions, God love them, they want you to use the decals that came with the kit, and they want you to painstakingly lay out each one individually. Well, to that I say phooey. Phooey on that. See here, they have it laid out individually. No, sir. Why work that hard? I've got them all in the proper orientation and size and everything done in vinyl. And I can lay this down at one, with a few measurements. A, the center, and B, the tick mark here and here that line it up on the aforementioned arc. And then I can tape it down and peel up the paper and everything is hunky-dory. Now, I do at some point want to put in more indications of the grid, but that's going to be easier to do once I have sprayed this with a flat coat, because the pencil lines will just stick better to the flat coat than they do this gloss. So for right now, the only lines I really need on top of the gloss are the quadrant lines, so that I can line up things left and right and down the center, and this aforementioned arc. So I've got those laid out. What I need to do is put some transfer tape over this and stick it down. I have got this is the line, or the template I was using before that came with the instructions that helped me find the center of the saucer. And don't worry about these Sharpie lines, because those will all fall inside of that, but it helps me to orient the bridge module. And then there are a couple of red stripes that go back here. And I am wary. I'm not exactly sure when I want to put this on. I might wait until the whole saucer is nailed down to the bottom of the bottom half of the saucer before I put that on. I think this might just be in the way of clamps and tape and all of that. Same thing with the bridge module. Obviously, I'm not going to glue this down or anything, but I do need to make sure that the wiring hookup it's at least visible here, that I can go in there with a hook and pull it up so that I can plug in the bridge module. But the one thing I want to do before I start laying the top of the saucer upon the bottom of the saucer is to get these numbers down. So let me take care of that tiny detail that is only the most glaring and important thing that you will ever see. And if you get this wrong, everybody will notice. Which brings us over to the bottom of the saucer. Now, these areas where I've got the light boxes, I am the most happy with these, because that is going to give me an area where I can lay some adhesive down on the top of this, so that when the saucer goes on top of it, there's a resting spot. What I need to do is kind of fill in these areas. It's like a big spot here, a little box here. Obviously all of these empty spaces, that's where I need to make some sort of ledge, so that when the saucer sits down on it, it's got a glued edge to rest upon. So I'm trying to figure out the best way of doing that without adding a whole ton of weight. I was thinking of building up just a little lip here and then filling it in with Bondo, which would give me a nice level surface that would fit this, that would fill around this contour. So I'm thinking of doing that, but that could add a lot of weight. But by the same token, if I don't do something substantial, by the time I go to clamp that, it's liable to crush it, and I don't want to do that. I want to have enough meat there that I can really do something as far as attaching. So that's what I've been scratching my head about for most of the weekend and into today. So while I am thinking about this, I will go ahead and put down those registry numbers. Well, that's a sigh of relief. The numbers are down. This is the transfer tape, and get ready to peel everything up again. Center line is lined up. This is lined up with the two tick marks here. And let's pull this tape off and see how she's going to look. And you tell me how you can get that clean a result with paint, or even using the decals, and I will not believe you. Look at that. Talk about your instant gratification. By lining up the simple tick marks here and here, you'll notice it follows exactly, well, you may not notice because it's tough to see that faint line, but it is following that exact line. Can't get any better than that. Yay, howdy. So now that I've got that, I can establish where my bridge is going to go, kind of put it in place. And then the last two things that need to go back here are these straight lines. I've got a couple sets of them here. I got to check the distance between these because I think I've got them too far apart. And then we lay in this guy. But like I said, I think I'm going to hold off on gluing him down. I can at least mark out where he's going to go, but I'm going to hold off on gluing him down until I get this put on there. But that's, oh boy, that's a milestone there. That's a high water mark. That says everything I needed to say right there. There's going to be some accent painting. This joint here is not going to be as clean as I had hoped, because you've got, you know, resin and fiberglass and they don't exactly match up. So there's going to be a gap there that I can try to fill in with some putty once it's in place. But there is a dark accent that's painted around here that I don't know how much of that I'm going to do, because I've always thought that was a little heavy-handed. The top of the saucer obviously is the one thing that has never been repainted in the history of the restorations, so there are only establishing pictures of what it currently looks like. When they were doing the restoration, they took all kinds of pictures of the work they were doing on the rest of the ship, but not so much the work they did on the top here, because all they did, I believe, was to go around and clean it like you would an oil painting or something. They went by and just got the current level of greasy gunk off of it, but did not touch up the paint or anything. So a lighter version of that accent green color is going to go there, but nothing near as heavy as what you see on the restoration. But that's looking nice. So pretty. Good, good, good. Okay, I think I've done about all that I can do to this at this stage. This is not glued in, but I've got the two parallel lines running here, and I'm running them a little bit long. It doesn't really matter. It goes up under the bridge module, and the impulse deck slides over the top of it, so that's good. This is going to be the struggle. I need to start putting in my filler boxes here so that I give myself a good healthy lip. Give myself a lot of good healthy lip for attaching this saucer. So I want to make the last rounds here, maybe get the hot glue out and get the wiring nailed down. Or, you know, I'm not really, well, I need to see how concerned I am about that wiring being loose. It doesn't really go anywhere. It's not raggedy. So let me see if I can just tape it down, and that will be enough, or whether I need to do some Mondo reinforcing. Welcome back to a new feature, which I'm calling Lou's Big Book of Bright Ideas. And you can see by how small the book is, you can make your own judgment about how bright the ideas are. But I figured it was easier to explain what I was planning on doing for the saucer rim here than to try to do it in place, as it were. So let's say this is a cross-section of the fiberglass of the bottom of the saucer. Well, where you have windows, say here's a window, light shining out, I've got a box drawn in here. I'll draw it in here. I've got a box in like this that has, you know, light shining in it like that, and windows are here, but I've made these little reinforced plastic boxes. Well, that gives me plenty of room, or plenty of glue surface, when it comes time to attach the very thin saucer, which attaches like this. See, that's the saucer going up like that, and there's plenty of glue surface here. Now around the rest of the rim, I basically have just this tiny bit, and if I try to glue a saucer, say this is the top of the saucer, and if I try to glue that to here, all I've got is this tiny area around the rim, and that is no bueno. That will not do. That will not serve any purpose. So what I'm thinking of doing, or what I'm planning on doing, is taking a bit of tubing, plastic tubing, and I'm going to glue it right here using some epoxy, some CA or whatever. I'm going to glue that there, and then I'm going to fill this area in and around it with the auto body filler, the not the spot putty, the actual thick actual Bondo that I used on the secondary hull. You've seen me use that before. And what that will allow me to do, and if I could put some around in here, just slather that in with a minimum of weight added, that's going to give me about a 1/2 inch is what I'm looking for. Give me a 1/2 inch here of glue surface all the way around the rim that I can attach the saucer down to. And this only has to happen in between the light box areas. So it's not like I'm doing the entire rim with it. I'm just reinforcing that structure. So gluing that in place, and the reason I'm using this round tube is it will hold the arcs better. I couldn't do it with square stock or rectangular stock because I couldn't bend it around to hold the arcs the way I would like it to. So I'm going to glue these down in such a way that I will have enough room to put some of that putty or the Bondo above it, and then level that off and still give me room to squeeze the epoxy. Now I'm going to flip the page to give you an exploded view of that, and I hope that does not become more prophetic than its name. But here is, let's say here's the top, and the top is also very thin out at the edge, and here's the side wall of the saucer, and then it goes out like that. By giving me this roughly 1/2 inch area that I can slop the Bondo in, then this gives me this whole top area. I'll hold this down a little bit from the top so that I can fill this area in with some 30-minute epoxy, which I picked up at the hobby shop. The 30-minute epoxy I'm going to have to let go overnight. I know it's 30 minutes to work time, but it says 6 to 8 to fully cure. So my goal is to get all of this done. Let's see, it's about noonish, to get it to a point where I can glue this top down tonight and let it be curing overnight. So I need to, quick like a bunny, get these guys glued in and get the Bondo slapped on it. Well, the Bondo doesn't take that long to dry, to cure, to set up. So I think I can do all of this if I get off of the camera now and get to it. I will show you as it goes in progress, but I wanted to show this in advance so that you can get a clearer idea of what I was doing. Well, hopefully now you can see what I was talking about. Here you can see the rod that I have put in, or the tube actually, since it's hollow in the center. If it's solid, it's a rod. If it's hollow, it's a tube. But this tube is in, and I put just the tiniest bead of epoxy in. I tacked it in place with CA, but just to give it an overall good connection, I put a little tiny bead of the 1-minute epoxy in there. And once this is all cured up, give it an hour or so, I'm going to come back in and just increase this a little bit more with some. I think I'm going to use the Bondo the Bondo putty. But what you can tell is I have doubled by the time this is all said and done, I will have doubled the width of my glue surface from just the amount of the edge of the fiberglass to about a 1/2 inch by the time this gets filled in. And I'll tool it down as smooth as possible so that I don't make my life more difficult by introducing an uneven surface here. But by the time I put the 30-minute epoxy over all of that and set this down and start with the taping and the clamping, here you can kind of see where it's meant to lay flat now, and there is my glue surface went from just this tiny bit to all the way into here, so that gives me that much beef to put my glue in. Then it will be ready to receive the top. So I'm going to let this epoxy cure for a bit and then whip up some the Bondo putty and trowel it in there. Okay, now you can see what I've just got done doing. I just did a quick round with some Bondo and laid it in here, and now I'm just tooling it a bit, flattening it out, giving me this nice about 1/2 inch lip. There's still some I can build up. I can't do it all because it collapses on itself but I can go so much on the first pass and then come back around on a second pass. But I'm just making sure that it's, oops, get it in camera, just making sure that it's leveled off, so when I put the saucer top back on top of it, I'm not creating any problems for myself. And you get to this weird stage where it's starting to set up but hasn't completely, and it makes it easy to tool and trim off, and works a bit like rubber, but it's set up enough that it's not still sticky, but it's not rock hard yet. So it gives you this quick little window of time when you can work on it. And I'm gonna let this set. I may come back and touch just some tiny edges of it, but what this does, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, what it does is it gives me a more wide area to stick down to when it comes time to put the epoxy down. It gives me more of an edge, and I just threw the rest of it back. What I had mixed up, I just threw the rest of it back on this joint covering up the bolts here. So that's it. I'm going to give this about an hour or so to dry. I'm going to clean it up a little bit and then come back and see what little touches I need to do. But I'm looking very hopeful that we may be ready to glue down the saucer tonight, the top of the saucer. That's a big step. That's probably the last truly big step in all of this. Okay, it's getting into the evening hours and I still haven't gotten this top nailed down. I was almost ready to do it, and then I realized I still had never solved the problem of these two windows right here that were outside of the light box. So I just did a quick whip up of some a one inch segment of lights, put it in a box there, and now I've got lights for those two windows. So yay. And now I'm getting to the point in the evening where I know I should be doing this, but if I do, I'll probably be up way late doing it to get it done right. So, but I want it to be curing overnight so that I can come back to it in the morning and start addressing the edge of the rim here. I just don't want to lose these hours of overnight curing. So I'm just going to power through it. Won't be shooting video on it because it's going to be a kind of a all hands on deck situation. Now I've got 30 minutes slow curing epoxy. I went out and got some more clamps. God knows I should be as prepared as I'm going to be because I've got the tape going to tape all the edges. I think what I'm going to do now is tape at least over the windows, tape over those, so any spillage or any gooping out of the epoxy won't mess up those windows. So let me do a quick tape off of that while the glue gun is heating up, and then after the glue gun is heated up, I can glue down that box and those wires. And I'm going to put mix up a batch, put a big old bead on the top of the armature and at the three basic corners. I mean, this one here up front and out on the other side there, and start slathering on the old 30-minute epoxy. Well, here you go. It's fairly late into the evening, but I've got the top taped down. I've got the clamps on it. I've got more 30-minute epoxy slathered on the inside than you could probably imagine. Also hit all of the armature, so that's nice and solid. It's hitting. You can see just by the thud of it, you can tell that the armature is going right straight up through there. There you can see it. But that's a darn good place to stop for today. I've got all of this taped down. I'm going to leave it like this overnight. Come to it first thing in the morning and see what see how it fared overnight. Welcome back, kids. It is Friday morning. It is the last work day of the week, and we've got exciting things to do today. First thing we're going to do is strip all these clamps and tape off of the saucer. See how she turned out. My only other goal for today is to touch up this edge, see how bad it turned out, see what kind of work it needs, and then hopefully touch up all of the hull color, which means that edge, the area under the pylons that has been waiting for so long, the shuttle bay, other areas that need the hull color touched up before we can get into our detail painting, which I'm hoping will be next week, and that will be the final week. We're this close, kids, unless I unveil a metric ton of damage under there. I think that's not going to turn out to take too long to fix. I feel like I should have some sort of TOS version of the Leaving Dry Dock music from the motion picture. They never did their own version of the Enterprise Leaving Dry Dock, but that's basically where we are. So let me strip some tape off and some clamps off. Okay, the clamps are off, the tape is off, the lights are on, and everybody's home. You know, I knew this was going to kind of be a rough edge. And if I had to make a choice as to which edge of it I would like to be the prettiest, because I knew the saucer was not going to lay down completely perfect all the way around, obviously you're going to choose this edge to be your showcase, because that's the view you're used to seeing. And any irregularities on the back side of it you can kind of work out. And I'm happy to report this edge is beautiful. It's a little wonky when you get over to here and back into here, but that's the kind of trade-off you're going to have to make. The saucer doesn't exactly fit, but that's okay. This is no big deal. I can put some putty in here and kind of resculpt this edge. I knew I was going to have to make up this gap back here, but that's fine. That's what they make body putty for. So what I'm going to do is rough this up with a little bit of the sanding pads, kind of see where my gaps are. And luckily I don't seem to have any gaps, which is what I was afraid of, is that I was going to have to try to tuck glue somehow back in there. Now the windows are still covered with tape. These ones are, because of the work that I've yet to do. And here's that gap that I was worried about way back on chapter 1 about filling in that gap, so, or the light leak coming out of that. So I'm going to have to do something about that, probably glue it in place, and then a little bit of epoxy sculpt just jammed up in there and touched up. But man, oh man, the Shevitz, I am happy. See, there's that light leak. That's the thing I was concerned about. But look at that. That's just pretty on a half shell here. Go ahead and turn those on. Man. Okay, let's get enough with the drooling. Let's get to the cleaning up of stuff. Alrighty, we're coming up on 3 o'clock and we're getting to the end of my work week. And I just got back from a late lunch and scouring the local auto body places. Could not find the Evercoat material that I was looking for this seam. But rest assured, I am not going to let that stop me, because what I've decided to do is use the JB weld, because it will dry, or when it cures, it rounds itself over and makes it nice and smooth. So I'm just going to mix up some of that and put it in the areas where it needs to go, and then we'll paint over that. Which brings me to the next point. This is probably where I'm going to end it for this week. I'm going to get this bead put in and then do some last minute construction. I'll probably put these guys on. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is I'm not going to get the hull color painted again today. I probably will do that sometime over the weekend so as not to fall too far behind, which will leave all of next week for finishing and detail work. So I'll get back on track that way. But importantly, I need to clean this seam up a little bit. Okay, I've got a nice little bead of the JB Weld going around the entire edge of the saucer, and once that cures, I can sand it down and carve it up and get some paint on top of it. Alright, it's been a long time coming, but I'm finally blocking up the back ends of these nacelles and putting the end caps on. And what I did was ran out to Walmart, got a pool float or a pool noodle, and this is the best time of year because they're closing out their summer stuff, and this was like all of $1. And actually, if you're looking to insulate your pipes for winter, go ahead and get this stuff too, because it's the same exact thing as they sell for pipe insulation for much more, for a much higher dollar figure, but it's blue. So if you can stand that your pipes are insulated with blue foam rather than black, go get you some. But I've already done it for this one that's blocked up, so I'm going to walk you through what I'm doing in this. Now the only thing I'm very careful about is that when I'm pushing the foam down the length of the nacelle, that I'm keeping it away from the wiring that goes to that strobe and the wiring that's in the blue light boxes, so that I don't yeah, make sure that the blue lights are still working, that I haven't pulled out any wires. And there's that wonderful impulse deck. Oh, that looks so good. So let me cut these. What I need to do is, it's a little bit big. I have to cut a notch out to go around the light box there. So let's do that. Okay, so I've cut an area out that's a little bit less than 1/4 of it to go over top of the, or to at least avoid the blue light box. So now it's just a question of shoving this up your old nacelle and seeing how well it fits. Okay, the foam has been jammed up the nacelle, and now all I'm going to do is take this end plate and glue it down, and then I'll be able to put the nacelle caps over top of that, and we'll be good to go. One last thing will be to attach the dome over top of that, and that will pretty much finish construction. I still have the orange domes to put on, but you knew that because you could see the inside domes. Those orange domes will go on probably after even all of the weathering has happened, because I don't wish to risk scratching them. So, okay, we're standing here in the dark because I want to run through the lighting, and it's much more dramatic this way. We start with the windows, and then we add the strobe lights. Sorry, we add the nav lights, and now we add the nacelles, and now we add the nacelle motors. Now, even though you can't see it, we're going to add the impulse engines, and now we're going to add the warp engine lighting. And for final grins, we're going to add the additional strobes on the nacelles. And there you can see the impulse deck is lit up. And you'll notice she's out of dry dock. There are no more supports on the back of the engines. There is no support under the saucer. You'll notice I've put the end caps on. And this completes construction. There are no more pieces to be added. Oh, well, take that back. I still have to glue down the impulse spine there. But I also have to glue down the bridge module. But this gets me to the point where I am going to be ready for final touches up, or final hull painting, and then it's all detail after that. And that's what next week is going to be about. I'm going to finish it off next week with the detail painting. It may be my imagination, but I think the engines are running a little bit quieter since I put the since I stuffed the noodles in the nacelles. That does feel a bit quieter. Let's take a look under here. Oh, that's just beauty. Now all that but that really bothers me, is all that reflection. That shouldn't be there, and it won't be once I have flat coated it. But we can see we've got some light leak there to deal with. Obviously we've got the edge of the rim of the saucer to deal with. And I think what I'm going to do is probably deal with a lot of that this weekend, and then we'll be allowing that to dry in such a way that next week I can, or even over the weekend, do the touch-up of the hull color so that that's got the rest of the weekend to dry. I really don't want to rush that. That's that enamel paint. So let me get a coat of that on maybe over the weekend, and then we will be into weathering and detail painting and details, decals, little tiny things next week. And to all the naysayers, I say, ha! That turned out to be pretty spot on level. And there's the other side. Oh, good Lord, what did I do to deserve this? Now, for the telling one, let's see how balanced it is towards the front. Oh my giddy aunt, look at that. Beauty. I can live with all of that. So only a few more hurdles to surmount, one of which is getting this down with no gap. And then it's all down to touch-up paint. Cleaning this off, I'm going to let that cure at least overnight so that I can get a good sanding on it. But man, oh Manischewitz, what a wine. Look at this. Ooh, it's going to be hard to top this project, kids. Well, what a week. Just looking outside and seeing how ominous it looks. It's not only that it's getting later in the season and therefore darker earlier, but it's a weird color out there, which makes me think there's a storm a-brewing. So I will quick get this chopped together and uploaded in case I lose power. But what a week it's been. It's astounding when I go back and realize that I started the week, I hadn't even attached the saucer yet. Came back from IPMS with all kinds of piss and vinegar and ready to jump back into it, and jump I did. Like I said, all major construction is done. Here are the parts that are left. I have the photo etch from the pylons, which isn't going to go in until I have reestablished my hull color and put the flat primer on. No, wait a minute. I have to reestablish the hull color, and then I can glue these guys down, and then I can put the flat on. So those have to go in yet. And these are the little comb things that go on either side of the, right up by the deflector on the secondary hull. Those have to go in. But everything else is put on, added to, screwed down, otherwise affixed. And I'm getting this stuff ready for the replacement of the pennants on the nacelles, which again, I have to get the hull color fixed first. So it's going to be, well, the stuff I'm going to do over the weekend is probably just going to be to finish sanding up that hull, or the saucer seam, getting that worked out, weather permitting. Now I'm looking at it, weather permitting, painting the hull color, because I have to mix up that enamel, which means, you know, opening windows and venting and things like that. Even though I won't be taking it outside to paint, I still need to have, you know, lots of ventilation going on. Ooh, the wind is, oh yeah, you hear that. Let's get this wrapped up quick. So until next week, when we'll be doing the finishing touches, it's going to be weathering. It's going to be the flat coat, and then weathering on top of the flat coat. Let's back it up. See if I can do this right off the top of my head. Once the hull color is down, we will do the new vinyl, replace the vinyl. We will be doing the decals, which the decals are the little hull numbers. Still haven't put those on yet. Once the decals are done, then we can flat coat it. Then once the flat coating is done, we can weather it, and the weathering is going to be what they call the space dirt. I'm not going to go nuts with the browns and greens like the filming model, but Still going to put some space weathering on, and then very lightly drawing in the grid on the saucer, not the entire grid, maybe just, you know, indications of it, the grid lines, with a very light pencil once the flat coat is in, because it won't show up on the gloss. And then gluing down the bridge, because I have to get the grid lines in before I put the bridge down, because the bridge is going to cover up my center point and I won't be able to get my circles after that. Then we stick the bridge down. And then after the bridge is down, the last thing that needs to be done after everything is done and weathered is to put the orange domes back on. So that's a full week's work ahead of me, and hopefully I can get it all done in time. But until then, you be good, stay out of the rain, and we'll see you here next time.